The shelter was silent, its walls cold and bright. The sound of a door closing echoed, but it soon faded, leaving behind a heavy, almost palpable silence. In a corner of the room, a dog sat. His eyes, dull and blind, stared into space with resigned calm. The room was empty except for him, and for a subtle sadness that hung in the air. He didn't look at the door as it opened and closed. He didn't make an effort to look at the other cells around him, where dogs wagged their tails and jumped toward the visitors, hope in their eyes. He, however, had already given up on that hope. He no longer knew what it was like to be seen, to be chosen. His steps were slow and hesitant, as if the weight of his blindness were a burden he carried in silence. And then she walked in. The girl. With her loose hair and a curious expression, she seemed lost among the toys and cages, but there was something about her that didn't fit in with that common scene of choosing. She approached slowly, her gaze going from one side to the other, and when she met the dog's opaque eyes, she stopped. Time seemed to slow down, as if the entire universe was waiting for the moment of connection. She reached out her hand delicately, as if it were made of crystal. "He chose me." His voice was soft, but filled with a certainty that deeply touched anyone listening. It was not a phrase said by chance. It was a silent acknowledgement of something only she could see. Something that was beyond the physical, beyond the visible. The dog did not move, but a light breeze seemed to pass between them, as if the air itself approved of their encounter. She looked at him again and in a gesture of pure compassion lowered herself to his level, which seemed more like a gesture of welcome than an action. He hesitantly approached, brushing his head against her hand. In that moment, a story was beginning. A story of silent transformation, not only for the dog, but for her as well. Clara was only 8 years old, but she seemed to carry the weight of a lifetime in her eyes. She was used to hiding her emotions, to hiding her sadness behind shy smiles and a facade of strength that most of the time even she didn't believe. Her mother always told her that she was too strong for her age, a remark that deep down made Clara feel even more alone. Her parents' separation was recent, and though Clara tried to maintain her composure, the emptiness that had formed within her could not be easily ignored. She spent her days without much enthusiasm, her mind always returning to the empty house she shared with her mother. The silence became more deafening with each passing day, and Clara began to feel as if the walls of the house were closing in around her. The afternoons were especially difficult. Her mother was always busy with work, and Clara, in her loneliness, found solace in books and the drawings she used to make. But inside, the pain never stopped. She was trying to find refuge in the little things, in the colors and shapes she drew. But even that seemed ineffective. The void continued to grow, like a shadow that could not be removed. But when Clara looked at the dog in the shelter, something changed. She saw him not just as an animal in need, but as someone in pain similar to her own. He had no voice to express what he was feeling, but his eyes, though blind, spoke of a profound loneliness. Clara felt an instant connection with him, as if, in that moment, they were pieces of a lost puzzle fitting together in the silence of their lives. When she reached down to touch him, which she did so tenderly, she felt for the first time in a long time that she could be the answer to someone, that she could offer something more than the emptiness that her life held. She didn't know it, but in that simple gesture she was beginning to heal both herself and him. The walk to Clara's house was silent. The dog, still new to her and to the environment, didn't know exactly what to expect. His steps, although hesitant, became firmer with each passing kilometer. Clara held him tightly but carefully, as if she feared that the world would once again be too cruel for him, as well as for her. The dog seemed to understand what was not being said. He could not see, but he felt every change in the environment. the familiar smell of Clara's house, the soft sound of the trees swaying in the wind. All of it brought him a sense of security he didn't know he needed. He didn't need to see to feel. His heart knew he was there in a place where the silence would not reject him, where he could be accepted in his entirety with all his frailties. Clara, on the other hand, felt something profound as she watched the dog adapt to his new life. He wasn't the kind of dog who would chase a ball or happily jump at anyone who called him. He settled in quietly, perhaps a little distant but also present. He didn't know how to express his gratitude, but the way he would stay by her side on the loneliest afternoons spoke more than words could. And that was how Clara's house began to transform, not into a home full of laughter and noise, but into a welcoming place where emptiness could be shared. She was no longer alone, and the dog somehow was not either. In the mornings when Clara woke up, he was there, lying next to her bed, patiently waiting for her to step out of her routine and finally face the world. She began to realize that in his small, everyday actions, he was offering her something precious, a chance to start over. When she stroked his head, she felt that he, despite his blindness, saw something in her that she could not yet see in herself. He did not look at her with the need for approval, but with the purest look of acceptance. He accepted her unconditionally, and that was more than she could have expected from anyone else. Over time, Clara and the puppy, whom she named Sam, began to develop a routine. In the beginning, it was a process of mutual adaptation, full of small adjustments and subtle changes. Clara taught him to trust her, while Sam, in his quietness, showed him without words the true meaning of compassion. The days, which had previously seemed long and empty, began to take on new meaning. Every morning, Clara woke up with Sam lying next to her bed, and she felt a lightness in her chest, as if he were there to protect her from the loneliness that had accompanied her for so long. She talked to him, telling him about school, about the small joys and sorrows of her day. Sam, with his blind eyes, never responded with words, but there was something in his gaze, or in the way he settled close to her, that gave the feeling that he understood every word. But over time, Clara realized that the people around her didn't understand the bond she had with Sam. Her friends at school commented on the dog's strangeness. Some even questioned why she had chosen an animal with so many difficulties, a blind dog who apparently couldn't keep up with her in games or races. Even her mother, who had seen her happier, began to show signs of concern. "Clara," she had said once, her tone almost like advice, "you don't have to carry the burden of saving the world. Maybe Sam isn't the best choice, he's just different." Clara, with the sensitivity of someone who has felt the pain of loss, responded with just a silent but profound look. She didn't need to explain. The bond between her and Sam was already too deep to be understood by those who had not experienced it. Instead of discouraging her, her mother's words only strengthened her resolve. She knew that Sam, with all his limitations, was all she needed at that moment. There was something about him that spoke directly to her heart, something that made her realize that her pain, her loneliness, was not something to be fixed, but something to be shared and understood. The fact that Sam was blind did not make him any less whole. On the contrary, he seemed to understand better what really mattered. Meanwhile, Sam was beginning to show, in subtle ways, his own capacity for transformation. Though he couldn't see it, he had an uncanny ability to sense it. He knew when Clara was sad before she even realized it. Whenever she was going through a difficult time, he would come over with a silent caress, placing his head in her lap or lying down next to her. A gesture that meant more to Clara than any words could express. One particularly difficult day, when Clara had a fight with her mother, she went out into the garden alone and sat on the cool grass, her chest tight with grief. Sam followed her, unhurried as always, and lay down beside her. She looked at him, and he, by doing nothing but being there, offered her exactly what she needed: companionship. There was no judgment, no demands. He was there, and that was all she needed to calm down. "You never leave me, do you?" Clara murmured almost in a whisper. Sam, as always, didn't respond with words but moved closer, resting his head against hers. That was a decisive moment. Clara understood in a profound way that the transformations she was experiencing were not just internal. They were made up of small, silent gestures, gestures of acceptance and unconditional love. Sam, the blind dog, did not need sight to see what she needed: to be loved and understood. The bond between Clara and Sam grew stronger as the months passed. They no longer needed words to understand each other. The dog, with his blindness, seemed to see with her heart in a way Clara never imagined possible. He knew her on a more intimate level than any human could. Every movement she made, every sigh that escaped her lips, Sam understood. However, as with all intense stories, life had a way of surprising us, bringing out our deepest fears. One day, Clara noticed something that made her stop for a moment, a strange sensation that made her feel a sudden chill in her stomach. Sam was different. His previously calm demeanor was now more agitated. He, who had always remained calm and quiet, by her side seemed restless, searching for something he could not find. She looked at the dog more closely, but she couldn't tell what was happening. He was blind and couldn't express his pain the way she saw it in a human being. There were no words for what he was feeling, but Clara could feel his anguish. Sam, the dog who had always known what to do, now seemed lost, as if he were on the verge of a great loss. It happened one afternoon when the clock was still showing 4 p.m. that Clara decided to take Sam to the park, as they always did. But something was in the air. When they arrived at the location, Sam hesitated before entering, and his disconcerting behavior only increased the apprehension Clara felt. Something wasn't right. In the distance, she saw a familiar figure, a familiar veterinarian who used to help Sam with his regular checkups. His gaze, however, did not bring the relief Clara had hoped for. "Clara, I think we need to talk," the vet said in a serious tone. "Sam's condition has worsened. He's facing more serious problems than we imagined." Those words fell on Clara like an unbearable weight. She didn't want to hear them, but she knew deep down that something was wrong. The dog she loved with all her heart was sick, and now she would have to face it, lose the being who had become her greatest source of comfort. I can't lose him," Clara stammered, her voice breaking. "He's all I have." The vet, with a kind but sad expression, tried to comfort her. "He was a warrior, Clara. But even warriors need to rest sometimes." In the days that followed, Clara found herself consumed by silent anguish, filled with thoughts of guilt and uncertainty. She wondered if there was anything she could have done to prevent this, but deep down, she knew that the love Sam gave her was not to be measured or compared. He had already given her what no one else could: non-judgmental acceptance, constant presence, and most importantly, the ability to be herself. It was during a particularly difficult night that Clara had the experience that would change her life forever. Sam was lying in his bed as usual, but there was something different about the way he was breathing. Clara leaned in, her hand touching his soft, warm skin. She closed her eyes, feeling a deep, intense peace settle inside her. And then, as if in a dream, she felt Sam saying to her, in a way that only connected hearts could understand, "It's not the pain that defines us, Clara. It's the love we choose to carry." She began to understand slowly that losing Sam did not mean losing the love they had shared. The pain of loss was inevitable, but the lesson he had taught her would be eternal. Clara's transformation was not just in learning to care for a blind dog, but in understanding that true love is not based on physical presence, but on the deep, silent, and powerful connection that is created. The next day, Sam was no longer there. Clara felt him leave with a serenity she never thought possible. He had left her, but not before teaching her the greatest lesson of all. The transformation he had brought about in her life would not be erased. He, the blind dog, had shown him that the true meaning of life was to learn to see with the heart. The days after Sam's departure were profoundly silent, as if the world had paused in respect for his loss. Clara missed him in every corner of the house, in the silence of the night when she lay down and the bed seemed emptier, in the soft light of the morning when coffee was made for two but there was only one. The physical void left by Sam was indescribable, but at the same time there was something more. He was still there, in all the little things they had shared. One afternoon, while walking through the same park where Sam used to run beside her, Clara stopped in front of the tree they always visited. The wind caressed her hair, and for a moment she closed her eyes, feeling a connection with the dog that somehow transcended her physical presence. Sam, with his blindness, had learned to see what was truly important. He had taught her to perceive what was invisible to the eyes, what was felt only by the heart. Clara smiled to herself, a warm feeling filling her chest. She sat in the shade of the tree and closed her eyes, allowing the memories of Sam to flow through her mind, soft and gentle. She no longer felt lost as she had before. He had been the anchor that brought her back to herself, and now she was able to look at the world with new eyes. Eyes that saw beyond the pain, beyond the loss, beyond the limitations. Silent tears streamed down her face, but they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of gratitude, tears that celebrated life and love and the lessons that would remain forever. Sam, the blind dog, had become her spiritual guide, the friend who had taught her without words the true meaning of sight. Over time, Clara began to open up to the world again. She adopted other dogs, each one bringing with him his own story, his own unique personality, but none of them replaced Sam. They were all different, but Sam, the blind one, was the one who left his mark on her soul. She never felt alone again because she felt that the love he had given her still lived in her heart, eternal and immortal. Clara's life, transformed by Sam's presence, began to expand. She began to give lectures on the connection between humans and animals, on how unconditional love can heal, connect, and transform lives. And in every word she spoke, there was the certainty that Sam was there with her, always present, guiding her, loving her, as he always had. One quiet night, as she walked home after yet another lecture, Clara looked up at the starry sky and with a serene smile whispered, "I know you're listening to me, Sam. I know you chose me, and I'll always be grateful for that." And somehow she felt he was there, like a gentle presence, enveloping her in a silent, eternal embrace, like a love that never ends. The transformation he brought to her life would never fade. He had chosen her, and in return, she had learned to see with the eyes of her heart. Clara and Sam's story wasn't just about the bond between a girl and her dog. It was about the quiet beauty of inner transformation, about the way one living being can deeply touch the soul of another. No matter how blind we are to the eyes of the world, sometimes it's blindness that allows us to see what really matters. Love, connection, and hope. The story ends not with a definitive goodbye, but with the certainty that just like Sam's love, the transformation and life lesson he brought to Clara will always be a part of her. Forever. Their journey together, marked by their blindness and the depth of their love, teaches us that often true vision is not what we see with our eyes, but with our hearts. If this story touched your heart, just imagine how many more are still to come. Here, every bark carries a new beginning, a second chance, a brand new life. If you believe in the power of dogs to change destinies, like mine, like yours, then subscribe to the channel and leave a like, because together we'll share stories the world needs to hear and feel.